Welcome and anchor down from the Vanderbilt campus. Jimmy and Zach are back for the 11th edition of JT and Zeek on West End. We're coming off of a huge victory, Derek Mason's first SEC one, 10-3 over Missouri. We're going to recap that game as well as go into the Houston preview.
Got that first SEC W. We came out of the gate with fire. Kari Blasingame lit somebody up on the opening kickoff. If that's not a fumble, I don't know what is.
Yeah, that was an amazing play, and the refs clearly gypped us, but we'll get into that a little later. On to the offense, we saw two quarterbacks play. We were very excited to see Kyle Shermer get the start, but it was a little weird to see McCrary come in after two drives. Shermer did not make any huge mistakes, a few short passes. That was kind of a trend throughout the game. The passes did not seem strong enough, but at the same time, there were 0 picks, and he looked all right and got a W.
Yeah, had a couple of drops, too. Shermer looked really good. When McCrary ran out there, I was like, what are we doing? But McCrary actually had a very good game in his limited work. He was 7 for 8 passing, no bad decisions, no what are you doing type of plays. Shermer, 10 for 20 for 89 yards. On the stat sheet, that doesn't look very good, but he managed the game, and that's all we needed with our defense, who only allowed 3 points.
Yeah, and also McCrary had a nice 14-yard rush in the game. He used his legs well. Hopefully, if we do use the 2 QBs in the future, he utilizes his legs more than he has in the past.
Completely agree with that. Rushing game looked very good. I think this is our best rushing game all year. Ralph Webb, 26 carries for 109 and a score. Sims, 9 carries for 58 yards, looked very good. Both of them looked great running between the tackles, especially Sims, which was a little bit of a surprise to me, but he really runs hard.
Yep, and Josh Crawford, also 5 rushes for 19 yards, looked great.
Yeah.
This was the first time that I've watched Ralph Webb this season, though, and noticed him breaking tackles. So many times this year, he's been hit by the first guy and just stops. Saturday, he kept moving his legs, and it looked amazing.
He made so many great reads, too, getting through the line very quickly. Receivers, Trent Sherfield and Choi stood out. They both had 5 catches, most of which were from Shermer. And onto the special teams, talk about that a little bit. Openshaw, great in the punting game. There were 16 total punts this game, 7 by him for 319 yards, which is a little over 45-yard average. Solid.
Yeah, something to note, though, is the fact that it takes him so long to get these punts off. Every single time, I'm afraid of it being blocked. And we've seen it happen before against Ole Miss, and it could easily happen again. I don't understand what it is. Maybe he doesn't understand the fact that he's taking a lot of time. Maybe it's planned. I have no idea, but it concerns me.
Yeah, I can't tell if they're going for like rugby-style punts. That's what it looks like on some of them. And some of them, it just looks like they're all out of sorts. But I just thought one was going to get blocked again, and that could have been awful in a game that was so low scoring. And him as the kicker could have sealed the game with around 2 minutes left, but he missed from 32, which is shorter than an NFL extra point, and he also missed from 42 at the end of the half.
Yeah, and that 42-yard one was left short. You hate to see that.
Yeah, after Webb got that long carry, broke free, reviewed it 1 second on the clock, and then it landed on the goal line pretty much. That definitely did not look good. But a great aspect of this team, the defense, giving up 3 points, that's just sick.
Mm-hmm. And can you even say they let up 3 points? Honestly, it was all that fumble. They didn't even let up like any yards on that drive. I'd consider that a shutout, essentially.
Great effort by them. The tackles were really spread out. McGaster led with 5 of them, and then there were 7 guys with 3 tackles, including Herring, Weatherly, Cunningham, Williamson. I know that Adam Butler had 2 for loss, including a sack.
Yeah, and you mentioned Herring. What about that hit in which the running back's helmet just popped off? Dude, that was a hard hit. You love to see that.
I think I've watched that around 20 times today. I can't get enough of it. That was one of the best defensive plays I've ever seen in person, if not the best.
I think you retweeted it, too. That was nice.
Oh, yeah.
Also, we saw Donovan Sheffield play. That was a bit of a surprise. I thought he was going to redshirt this season. We burned the red shirt. He did get a tackle. A little questionable, though. I don't understand that decision too much, but...
Yeah, with all the depth we have at corner, I don't really get it either. That pass interference he had at the end could have cost us the game. Wasn't really a bad play on his part. It looked like he tripped on it. Can't get too mad at that.
Yeah, and a few stats to note. Mizzou was 0 for 14 on third down against us. That means we did not let up a single third down conversion.
Yeah, there's also around 40 minutes during the game where they didn't have a first down at all.
That's insane. And they totaled only 188 yards, and 50 of them, I believe, were like at halftime. That's it.
Yeah, midway through the third quarter, I think they only had around 50 yards. Drew Lock, their quarterback, was a terrible 14 for 34 for 108 yards, and he led their team in rushing with 39 yards. We held their running backs to only 1.5 yards a carry.
Yeah, defense was lights out. There's really no other way to say it. We were phenomenal, and that's only going to continue. A couple more things to mention about the game. One is the bad refs. I mean, that first play, I have never seen such an obvious fumble. Like, are you kidding me? When we saw that replay, the knee clearly wasn't even close to down. The ball was clearly out of his hands.
That was terrible. Then they reviewed that one where Missouri looked like I knew they didn't catch it. It looked like they might have caught it in the corner of the end zone, but the ball popped out. And then they decided to review it anyways. And then there's the one where they were diving, had a diving catch on midfield, and the ball obviously hit the ground, had to review that and overturn it. It seemed like they had to review a play every couple of drives, just slowed the game down.
Yeah, completely agree. It was ridiculous. And one last thing I'd like to note, the offensive line. They were phenomenal. We mentioned that the running game was strong. That's a testament to how the offensive line played. I believe Spencer Poley was like offensive player of the week in the SEC or offensive lineman
of the week. Yeah. The interior of the line was so tough during the game. Offensive line and defensive line. We had 4 sacks. Weatherly, Stokes, Butler, and Herring all recorded one.
Yep.
I think at this time we're going to go into Houston, try to break them down, talk about our chances next week.
All right, so Houston, they're ranked 18th right now. I believe 19th in the coaches poll. 7-0 on the season, first in the American Athletic Conference, but tied with Temple and Memphis, 3 teams that are all doing extremely well. The game is in Houston, 6 p.m. Central Time, and Houston's favored right now by 12.5 points. It was previously a little higher than that, actually.
I expect that to get down. It has to get down to around only a touchdown by game time. It's an insult.
It's a slap in the face. Really, like, you've got to be kidding me. They were favored by only 21 against UCF. That's an 0-8 team that's faced nobody.
UCF might be the worst Division I team.
Exactly. The fact that the point differential in the how much they are favored by is only 8.5 points. What an insult.
Houston, very high-powered offense. The fewest points they scored all season was 34 in their win against Louisville. Louisville, by far the best team that they've played. Still a pretty underwhelming team. They're also 3-4, but play in the ACC. Overall, Houston's opponents have had a record of 9-33 this year.
Yeah, unbelievably weak opponents, and that makes this game really difficult to predict. They haven't faced anyone good. We have. Clearly, they have the better record, but it's hard to size up these two teams. We'll try our best to do that. So, Houston's offense, right now they're averaging 47 points per game. That's 4th in all of the NCAA. They also
30th in passing yards, 270 yards a game.
And 7th in rushing yards with 292 per game.
That's a lot of yards.
Yeah, a lot of those yards are coming from the QB Greg Ward Jr. This guy is an absolute stud.
Yeah, definition of a dual threat quarterback. He has 677 rushing yards and 15 rushing scores on the year. To put that in context, he has about 100 yards more than Ralph Webb on the season as their quarterback.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure a week ago he was number 1 in the entire nation in rushing touchdowns, any position. In terms of passing, he's 133 for 186. That's a 71.5% completion percentage. So he's highly efficient, and he also has 10 passing touchdowns and only 2 picks. So, like I said, extremely efficient guy. Gets the job done. Very few turnovers.
Definitely does not turn the ball over. Greg Ward's go-to target, DeMarcus Ayers, 51 receptions. That's over 7 a game. To give you an idea of that, Sherfield has 41. So he has 10 more receptions than Sherfield on the year, which have went for 654 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's a small guy. He's a quick guy. He's only 5'10", about 180, actually listed at 178.
Yeah, and actually, as you mentioned, that small size, Greg Ward Jr. also is only 5'10". Really small guy, formerly receiver, converted to quarterback.
Tackling is going to be key in this game, not letting them get away.
Absolutely. And their second receiver is also good. Chance Allen, 6'2", 200. He has 2 touchdowns on the season and 356 yards. Let's get on to the running game now, because this is one of the best running offenses in the entire country.
Yeah, when it comes to the running game, one guy you got to look at, Kenneth Farrow. He's a 5'10", 218-pound senior. He has 112 rushes for 669 yards and 8 scores on the year. That's 6 yards a carry.
Yeah, he's been extremely impressive, but he may not be as strong as his stats suggest. He got 167 yards in 3 of those touchdowns against UCF, and that was only on 13 carries, so that's like an average of 12 yards or something, 13 pretty much. Yeah. And there's been a couple other games in which he had very highly inflated stats.
Against a really bad team.
Yeah, exactly. Louisville, he didn't play as well.
So our defense matching up against this offense, this is going to put Derek Mason to the test like he has not been tested before at Vanderbilt. He is known for stopping the read option, for containing running quarterbacks like he did when he was the defensive coordinator at Stanford. His 3-4 will have to prove its worth on Saturday.
Yep, it's the ultimate test. Now moving on to Houston's defense. They're also strong, but as we've mentioned, they haven't really faced anyone. They allow just under 20 points per game, which is good enough for them to be 28th in the entire NCAA. Also, they are tied 5th in fumble recoveries with 9. That's a huge stat. We've had a lot of fumbles this season. We have to minimize the turnovers this week.
Oh, yeah, 5th in forced turnovers. They're first in turnover margin out of all D1 teams.
Yep.
Plus 13 in that category.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. Now, in terms of their defense and yards let up, they let up an average of 264 yards passing, which is pretty bad. That's 103rd out of 128.
Consider the competition they're playing, too.
Yeah, exactly. Which means we have to find a way to have our pass game work this week.
Yep. They are very lenient in pass defense. They are tough in rush defense, which makes up for it. Only 98.3 yards per game allowed. Also, they only allow opposing running backs to have 2.93 yards per carry.
Yeah, that's insane. The one thing about their rush defense is they have let up 10 rushing touchdowns this season. That is well above average among college football teams.
Oh, yeah.
And that makes me think we need to get down the field with our passing game, and then once we get to the red zone, we just need to run it.
Definitely have to run the ball in the red zone, partly because of their tough rush defense, and mostly, I think, because of how good they are at forcing turnovers. We definitely don't want McCrary throwing it in that area of the field.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And just 2 players to note on their defense. One is outside linebacker Stephen Taylor, who has 8 sacks on the season. He's averaging right around 5 tackles per game. And also cornerback William Jackson III, who has 2 picks and is projected to be drafted in the top 3 rounds.
Yeah, we talked about Openshaw a little bit, too. Special teams. Their kickers never made a field goal longer than 34. They replaced their first kicker, who was awful at the beginning of the year. Also, they have an above-average kickoff, punt return defense, but nothing really to speak of. Nothing noteworthy.
Yeah, exactly. Special teams, nothing noteworthy, just a generic team. Hopefully we can see something out of Sims, but we'll see.
Ryan White has been really good in the punt return game, too. I'm not sure if we mentioned that before. His long was only 15 yards against Missouri, but there were so many of them where he had 8 to 10 yards, just made 2 guys miss. I was thinking, what are you doing? Call a fair catch, and then he would just shake off a couple guys. Shout out to Ryan White for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, Zach, who do you think is going to be our player of the game against Houston, or who is the most important player?
Most important player, you have to look. Normally I say the quarterback or maybe a running back. Because of their offense, you just got to say one of the guys on the defensive side of the ball. And in watching football at the college level, at the NFL level, containment is so important against a quarterback who can run the ball. Usually the middle linebackers don't seem to be at fault at the plays that go for touchdowns, the plays that go for huge games. So I'm looking at outside linebacker. I'm looking at Weatherly to set an edge on the outside, even if it means rushing the quarterback a little less.
All right, I was actually thinking the same exact guy. I'll pick someone on offense, though, to change it up, and I'm going to go with Darius Sims. past 2 games, he's been amazing at running back. We've been utilizing him so much more, and it's worked unbelievably well. Over 6 yards per carry last game. He's a guy that could absolutely be a 100-yard rusher, even against Houston's good rush defense. So I'm going to be looking at Sims on offense.
And even though we've exhausted this topic over the last couple weeks, it has to be discussed. It's what people want us to talk about. Who do you want to see us run out there at quarterback, or do you like to see both guys?
I don't like the idea of having 2 quarterbacks. It worked last game, but it's just too risky. I want to see the young guy, Kyle Shermer. We've burnt his red shirt already. He looked good in the game, not great, but this is a perfect time for him to develop. He's facing a legitimate team. We have a lot of momentum going our way. He looked good last game. I mean, I want to see Shermer.
If I had to pick one guy, I definitely agree. I'd go Shermer. Turnovers are huge. I still have faith in our defense, no matter how much people hype up Houston's offense. Great defense beats great offense at any level. Just limit the turnovers. Shermer's the guy to do that. But I'm not as opposed to playing 2 guys as some people are. As long as they don't call any pass plays longer than like 5 yards down the field for McCrary. If it's to come in for 4 or 5 plays, we're planning on running it anyways, and then he can fake the little option. It adds a little more to the offense. Like Mason said, it's hard to prepare for 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, McCrary's run game's strong, like you said. If it's short passes for him and he doesn't turn over the ball, I'm purposely fine with him being in there. But if he has 1 turnover, I don't want to see his face on the field again. It's that simple.
I agree. Last thing, I think I want to ask you a question. There's one guy who we don't usually mention during the podcast who you think we will be mentioning after the game, have a big game for us. Who might that be?
I'm going to say Josh Crawford. There's a young guy that we've seen a few times in the past few games. He was injured for a little bit, but no one expected much from him at all. Recently, he's shown that he's almost like a pinball machine, just bouncing all over the place with the ball. Doesn't get too many carries, but he's a guy that's going to be factoring into the run game a lot going forward, and he could easily be a guy that scores a few touchdowns and makes defenses think twice.
I love that pick. I would love to see Crawford break one. I'm looking at the defensive side of the ball. I guess this isn't a true sleeper because he's a starter. He plays every week. Going on the road, the older guys are important. He's also an energy guy. He loves playing football. Torrin McGaster, I see him getting a pick, maybe taking one back this week. He's a guy who wants to get in the end zone, and he deserves it the way he's been playing.
And it's about time we get some picks. I mean, these cornerbacks are amazing. They don't have the turnovers to show for it, but hopefully they will soon.
Okay.
All right, now moving on, I think it's time for the battle round.
Yeah, this is where we make game picks. As of now on the season, I am 15-7.
Yep, I am a 10-12. Not amazing.
He's coming back, though. A lot of that was the first week.
Yeah, I started 0-5.
We have 4 SEC games on the slate this week. We're going to start out with the biggest one, the one everybody's been waiting for, LSU at Alabama.
I'm taking Alabama in this one. I am strongly convinced that they are the top team in the SEC, and it's in Tuscaloosa, going with the Crimson Tide.
I don't know. There's a tight game there last week, and there's no way Tennessee is a better team than LSU. I'm going with the Tigers on the road.
Okay. Speaking of Tennessee, next one up is Tennessee at Kentucky. Who are you taking in that?
I can't pick Tennessee in a close game, so I'm going with Kentucky.
I'm taking Tennessee. I think there's a more talented squad.
I can see that too. Next game, Florida at Georgia.
All right. I'm going to say this. I think Florida's the better team, but for some reason, I just feel like Georgia's going to win. I'm taking Georgia.
I got to go with Florida. I just think they're significantly better than Georgia on most areas, and their defense is just so good.
I agree with that. I just, for some reason, see Georgia winning. And last, we have Ole Miss at Auburn. Who do you have in that?
Even though Ole Miss has looked shaky of late, I'm still going with Ole Miss. Auburn's just not a good football team.
Yeah, Auburn just lost in quadruple overtime to Arkansas. They've proven game in and game out that they just aren't great in the SEC this year. I'm taking Ole Miss also.
I think that's it for this week. We'll be back after the game. Really excited to watch this one. I think it'll be fun. Houston's not a team I've seen a lot. I haven't watched any games of Houston this year. It should be fun to watch.
I've seen them a little bit. They've looked good, but this is their best test. This is a great test for us, and we're coming off of our first SEC win. If that's not enough to pump you up for this one, I don't know what is.
Yeah, follow the first SEC win with the first win over a ranked opponent. That would be huge for this program. Get us up to 500.
Absolutely. Let's make it happen. Thanks for tuning in, and anchor down.
Anchor down.